It's the International Soccer Preview. We are Soccerphiles Canada. Welcome to Series 31, looking at the players of the 2025 African Cup. This episode is looking at the players of Zambia. Part 2, the selections. Here we go! Hello and welcome to the International Soccer Preview by Soccerphiles Canada. I'm Kevin and this is a continuation of Series 31 on the players of the 2025 African Cup. This episode is part 2 of our coverage of Zambia's players. The final roster is released and we're looking at the selections of Zambia. In part 1, we compiled a list of players and their likelihood of reaching the final squad. That was based mostly on their participation from after the 2023 African Cup that was played in January of 2024 up until the October 2025 games. We considered a few other factors as well to create that list, and we also gave some career information on the main players to help you to get to know them better. In part 2 here, our focus is on the selections, especially the final selections. Before we continue, we want to let you know that in the springtime of 2026, probably in April, we'll start producing episodes for the 2026 World Cup, which takes place in the summer, of course, of 2026. Keep an eye out then for those episodes, or better yet, subscribe to the channel and it'll notify you when the episodes come out. This mediacast is divided into 3 sections. So section 1 is going to be some team information. We have a big announcement to make if you don't know already. Oh, my computer's moving very slow here. Just graphics will be a bit behind. So section 1 on team information here. Section 2 is the selections and our predictions of starters. That's the main part of the media cast. We review the list that we compiled in part 1. We'll tell you who made the preliminary squad and who made the final squad. We'll also try to predict starters. We took steps towards that in part 1 by providing a narrative of each position over the period. I wish I could reproduce or repeat those narratives here because they're quite good. In letting us know, who was in the position over the period. But I found it took too long when I tried to do that because we also want to examine the lineups in games played between October 2025 and now to see if they give us any further clues as to who will start. And finally, we will make our predictions on the starters, based on all the information that we've provided through parts 1 and 2. Section 3 will start with our spotlight review. That is a quick run through the players who made the squad, as well as our predicted starters. And we'll also review surprise selections, non-selections, and new players, quite a few actually to Zambia, as well as updating on any injury situations. All right, let us jump right into section 1 here, and we'll talk about the squad. Well, the big news is that manager Avram Grant was let go, apparently it was mutual, after their performance in World Cup qualifying. Of course, he had done well to get them here. They finished first in their group ahead of Ivory Coast to qualify for this tournament. We're going to take a look at both of those campaigns to try to see if it's justified, if the firing or, the release is justified. So this is a good campaign that got them here. They did lose to Ivory Coast or in Ivory Coast in their opener, and a draw with Chad away was pretty bad. Chad at home, that wasn't a good result. But otherwise, they won all games, including over Ivory Coast at home, and finished 1 point ahead of them. So, that was a good campaign. Let's take a look at the one that cost him his job here. And we see that actually 3 losses at home to Tanzania. Morocco, you can understand, but Tanzania and Niger, those results at home, not so good. On the road, though, they did beat Tanzania, so exchanged wins with them. and they were awarded a win to Congo, but they did finish behind, or they lost to Niger then. So they ended up fourth in the table, Morocco winning the group handily, but they were behind Niger and Tanzania. So that is a pretty poor result. I can see the point here, and perhaps it wasn't a rash firing. But, firing any manager just as the cup approaches causes a lot of changes, and we're going to see those changes here. Anyway, we just kind of inserted that because the manager was fired. Other things we want to talk about with the squad, I'm actually going to get rid of those graphics now. Other things we want to talk about the squad are... well, in part one, we looked at the club affiliations of players, the games they played over the recent period, and their preferred formation. So that's interesting information, but we're not... Scurry. My body was suddenly seized by a paroxysm of coughing. Here, though, we're not going to repeat all that again. What we're looking at here is what the teams published. So most teams in the previous cup released a preliminary squad of 55 players. They had to submit that to CAF, actually, but this time it was not necessarily released. Some teams did and some teams didn't. Fortunately for us, Zambia did, and so we do have the 55-man preliminary squad to look at. I think they call it provisional squad, and we can see then which players were cut and which made the final tournament. So 28 players are allowed in the tournament, and Zambia did bring 28 from a 55-man preliminary squad. So that means they would have to cut half of the players, 27 of them there. Before we move on to section 2 to see who those players were, let's take a look at the games played after October 2025, because we're going to be looking at those lineups to help us determine who the starters are. So initially, when we did part 1, we only had one friendly slated. That was on November 14th against South Africa. That game was played on November 15th. I'm not dead sure that there's not a mistake in the dates there. But anyway, they played in South Africa. We're not really interested in the results but the lineups, but I might as well tell you that was a 3-1 loss. And then on November 18th, they played in Angola, and that was a 3-2 loss to Angola, who is also in the African Cup here. And we were hoping teams would schedule warm-up games before the tournaments. Actually, not that many did, but fortunately, Zambia did. They played Congo DR. That game took place in Spain, actually, on December 16th, and they lost that game too. So not good in terms of results for the run-up, but as I say, good for us in that it might give us a hint as to the starting lineup there. All right, that is all of our business in section 1. We move on to section 2, the main part of the mediacast here, and we start with the manager, and the manager is the big change here. We had Avram Grant after part 1 on our list. Now we have to, well, we're going to highlight him in red, which is a horrible thing to do. But we introduce the new manager here, Moses Chichone. I'm not sure how to pronounce it. It's probably Sichone there. And let's take a look at him. He is an ex-player for Zambia. He played from 1998 to 2006 with 30 caps for the national team and no goals. He was a defenseman, and was part of was part of 3 tournaments: the 1998, 2000, and 2002 African Cups there. So his career was actually spent mostly in Germany with German teams there, and he was the assistant manager here prior to becoming manager in October of 2025. That's when this happened, at the end of October. So he actually did manage them through the 3 friendlies that we'll be looking at. So Moses Chichone then, or Chichone, guiding them through the tournament here. And let's move on to goalkeepers. So let's see what we have on our list after part one. We have a definite candidate, Lawrence Mulenga, and I think I'll just do this as we're going here. Lawrence Mulenga was selected for the final squad. The likely candidate, Toaster Sabata, is the first of several surprises we have for you today. He only made the preliminary squad there, despite being a likely candidate. We had two possible candidates, Charles Kalumba, he made the preliminary squad, and Patrick Chuma did not make even the preliminary squad. The same is true of the first of our possible but unlikely candidates, Victor Chabu, not making the preliminary squad. But we have Francis Mwanda, our possible but unlikely candidate, selected for the final squad there. And we have some new names to put on the list here too, because we only have two goalkeepers. We need another one, and it is new candidate Willard Mwanza, called up to the squad. We're going to introduce him right away here because we're going to introduce players that we didn't cover in part one. But we'll just finish off filling out the list here. We had two more candidates on the preliminary squad, Mangani Banda and Christo Chitambala. Mangani Banda and Christo Chitambala. We won't go into detail on those. I should tell you, though, that Christo Chitambala is the first player I have encountered born in 2009. So he's just 16 years old and the first of that birth year that I have ever encountered. So he will remain in my memory. Actually, we should look at the two candidates because we kind of gave short shrift to players at the possible but unlikely level. We said we would introduce them if they made the squad. So here we go with the Francis Mwanza, not to be confused with the new candidate Willard Mwanza. Francis Mwanza has been with Zambia since 2003. He has 8 caps for the national team and is 23 years old. And his career has been all with teams in Zambia. So recently moved from Green Buffaloes to Zanaco in Zambia there. He was selected for the 2023 African Cup, just on the bench there. And over the period, he didn't start any games. He just subbed in for one and was on the bench for one and not selected for 12 others. That's why we thought he was unlikely. He did, however, play in the African National Championship in the summer this year, Francis Mwanza, so must have made a good impression on the assistant manager at least. The other one, Willard Mwanza, also with the national team since 2023 with 5 caps and no goals. I think those might also be in African National Championship. Actually, they are. He's no youngster. He's 28 years old, Willard Mwanza, and plays for Power Dynamos in Zambia since 2022, his most recent club. So as far as the senior team goes, he has never appeared for the senior team before being named to the preliminary squad. And wow, here he is on the final squad in the African Cup, probably sitting on the bench there. And that's what we're going to talk about next, because we're looking at what we think the likely starters. So at the end of part one, well, we didn't actually talk about who we thought the starters were going to be. We were saving that for part 2 here, but we did actually make note of what we thought. So we thought Lawrence Mulenga was a likely starter, and Toaster Sabata and Charles Kalumba possible starters. However, those two are off the squad now. So we are going to going to look at recent games before we make our final prediction here. Actually, Toaster Sabata, the player off the team or just not selected, started the first of the 3 friendlies. Francis Mwanda did start the second, and Lawrence Mulenga the third. So what do we draw from that? Well, after much pondering, we are putting Lawrence Mulenga as a definite starter here. We don't think they'll start either of the other two. So 3 stars here on the graphic, if you're looking at it, indicates we're putting our full weight behind it, behind our prediction. Not that we'll necessarily be right. Let's move on to central defenders. We have two definite candidates here, Kabaso Chongo and Gift Mfande, and both of those were selected for the final squad. We also have at the likely level Dominic Chanda. He was selected as well. Two possible candidates here, Frankie Musonda and Stopila Sunzu. And both of those selected. So in Sun Tzu, they're kind of bringing back a veteran into the defense, which we thought they would do. We did have him as a possible candidate, but actually hadn't been selected for the last 4 matches. So I won't go into details anyway. He's there. And then seemingly off the squad, Tandy Mwape. Just selected for the preliminary squad there, so not as much off the squad as it looked. Two new candidates here, but both of them just making the preliminary squad. So I'll just drop their names. The first one is Jadel Katongo, 21 years old, and the second one is Happy Nsiku. He's just 20 years old. So those are players we might see coming into the squad in the future. Okay, let's go to what our predictions were at the end of part 1. I think it's usually a 2-man central defense. I'm just looking at my notes here. Usually a 2-man defense, but the odd time they featured a 3-man defense. So we're looking at 2 to 3 players here. We'll probably pick 2 as starters here. Definite starter, we thought Kabaso Chongo would be a definite starter. We thought Benson Sakala, who's actually not on our list here, he's a defensive midfielder who came back and played a lot in central defense over the period. We think Benson Sakala a likely starter, and then possible starters Gift Mfande and Stopila Sunzu. Let's look at the friendly games here. We have it is Kabaso Chongo alongside Benson Sakala in the first. That's the pretty standard defense, we think. In the second game, though, 2 new players. It was Stopilo Sunzu, the veteran, alongside newcomer Lan. Where is Lan on our list? Sorry, I thought he was one of the... Well, I know he is new. I thought he was a new central defender. Now I got to find him. Okay, he's a forward. That is takes me by surprise. Anyway, we're going to meet him when we get to the forward line, or else the graphic on my thing was wrong. I'm just going to look and see if there's another player who is who's more likely. But all the forwards are forwards, so it does look like it was Lon. So we will look at him when we get to the forwards. That's a bit bizarre. Anyway, the third game was a further different pairing, 2 new players. So 6 different players used in the 6 positions. The third game was Dominic Chanda and Frankie Musonda, which is, that's fine. So really doesn't give us much indication of who's going to be the starter. Looks like they were just kind of trying everyone out. So we're going to stick with what we had. Here, we're going to view Kabaso Chongo as a definite starter, and Benson Sakala, we'll do that when we get to the midfield there, as a likely starter. And then we're just going to give 1 star as a possible starter to Gift Mfande and Stopila Sunzu. I secretly think Sunzu, though, might be one of the starters, because I think they'll rely on experience in their first game, as you'll see. Going forward. Okay, let's go to the left back position here. And begin with the candidates. So we had at the definite level Lubambo Musonda, and he was selected for the squad. No candidates at the likely level here, but at the possible level, Kebson Kamanga. Kebson Kamanga not even selected for the preliminary squad. And then seemingly off the squad, actually the starter in the 2023 African Cup, Roderick Kabwe. He's been unattached to a club, so we're not surprised that he didn't make even the preliminary squad there. We do have a new candidate, and actually he was selected. This is David Hamasenya. David Hamasenya. And we're going to introduce him because he's new. He has been with Zambia just since 2025 here, 3 caps and no goals, and just 18 years old. He's with Leganes in Spain since 2025. He moved from Zambia, from a very small club in Zambia, actually, Shamuel FC. And he got his first appearance on the bench in September 2025, Hamasenya, and started 2 of their remaining 6 games to November 2025. He was subbed in for 1, on the bench for 2, and not selected for 1 other. So to be honest, he should have been on our radar, given that he had been on the team, or at least on the bench, up until October 2025. For some reason, he missed our attention. But here he is making the final squad. Kind of embarrassing for soccer files there. So 2 candidates, Lubambo Musonda and David Hamasenya. And let's look. Well, we hadn't had Hamasenya on our radar, and we wouldn't have put him among the starters anyway. We had Lubambo Musonda as a definite starter, and I should point out that he's actually coded as a right back, so they were using out of position players over here, because our 2 possible starters were Kepson Kamanda, the central defender. He didn't even make the squad there, and central midfielder Obina Chisala. So, well, David Hamasenya is a left back, at least. Let's look at the games and see what we got. We have actually the central midfielder Chisala once again kind of coming into the position, an out of position player, and it was a right back, Kilian Kanguluma, who will meet right away, starting on the left in the second. The third match had David Hamasenya there as the starter. And so we do think he's a possible candidate, especially since he's the only one coded as a left back. So our revised list has 2 possible starters on it, David Hamasenya and right back Lubambo Musonda. That is what we're going with. So we'll put a single star beside each of those players. Yeah, no, we're not really sure, given what we've seen here. Okay, there's my star. Okay, that's it for left backs. Let's move over to the right side. We actually did move Lubambo Musonda over to here. That kind of indicates that he spent most of his time over the recent period over here. So we don't have him on the right. We have no definite or likely candidate, actually, but 2 possible candidates, Benedict Shepeshi. Benedict Shepeshi just making the preliminary squad there, but the other one, Matthews Banda, did make the finals cut, so he is selected. And then the player we just mentioned, actually, Kilian Kanguluma, who started the second friendly there, was a possible but unlikely candidate here, and ultimately wasn't selected for the squad. So Kilian Kanguluma just making the preliminary squad there. Finally, we have seemingly off the squad Zephaniah Fury, and he was not selected even for the preliminary squad there. Okay, let's look and see. No, we have a new candidate to introduce, just one at the preliminary squad level, Jonathan Calamina. But again, maybe a name to come up in the future because he's only 17 years old. But named to the preliminary squad, which is something for him. And let's see what we're thinking about for starters there. So going into or at the end of part 1, We thought Gift Mfande, the central defender, I guess I should explain that because he's not on our list here. Central defender Gift Mfande was playing over here as a right back, so another out of position player. We thought he was the likely starter given what had happened over the last 2 years, and Benedict Shepeshi a possible starter. Of course, Benedict Shepeshi is off the squad now. So let's see what happened in the friendlies there. And we do have Gift Mfende starting the first of those friendlies, but it's Matthew Banda starting the second and third. So let's revise our starter predictions. Benedict Shepeshi no longer an option. Well, we're going to put Matthews Banda as the likely starter now. But actually, one thing that strikes us is that now that David Hamasenya is a possibility on the left, we think Lubambo Musonda might come back to the right side after all, he is coded as a right back. So we're going to put Lubambo Musonda and Gift Mfande as possible starters here. So that means 2 stars for Banda, and we have to kind of go back in the thing. But we already have Musonda. We already have left Lubambo Musonda as a thing. So I'm going to move him over to the right and give him a star over here. And then Gift Msonda, we didn't think he'd be a starting central defender, just at the possible level. So we'll give him a star. Over here too. What was he at the likely level of making the squad? At the definite level of making the squad there. So pretty complicated, and who knows really what will happen in those left and right back positions, given the new players that have come in and the players we expected to be selected not always being selected. We're going to see that even more dramatically further upfield here. Okay. We are moving further upfield. We're going on to the midfield. Zambia was one of the few teams where we actually did separate defensive and central midfielders. And the reason for that was they favored a 3-man formation. But it was actually pretty consistently a defensive midfielder playing in the middle and central midfielders flanking them. So we just felt we could separate them here. And so for candidates, we have at the definite level Benson Sakala, who was selected for the squad. We have Mikel Chaiwa as a likely candidate. He was also selected. However, another surprise here are our likely candidate Calvin Papumbu, just selected for the preliminary squad there. We had 2 possible but unlikely candidates. The first of them, Dominic Kanda, not selected even for the preliminary squad. But the second one, Golden Mafuenta, was selected for the preliminary squad, but not the final squad. So yeah, it's not a surprise for us to have the possible but unlikely candidates make the preliminary squad there. We have 2 new candidates over here, and one of them makes it, so probably at the expense of Kevin Kapumbu there. We have David Simukonda. David Simukonda. I don't know if this is the right place to say it, but I did look into the manager's reasoning for making some of the changes, because we're going to see several likely candidates not selected for the squad. And basically, he's aiming for youth and speed. So basically took players within the Zambian league who are showing promise, young players showing promise, and especially showing speed in the league. Again, I'm not sure defensive midfielder is the right place to say this, but that's the justification for most of the changes. He said he had a very difficult time selecting the squad, the manager there. Anyway, David Simukonda, and we'll finish out the list before we introduce him. The other one is Frank Chilashi. Frank Chileshi just making the preliminary squad there. Now let's look at the newcomer, David Simukonda. Been with Zambia since 2025 with 2 caps. He's just 20 years old and playing for Zesco United, as most of these new players will be. In Zambia, Zesco United is in Zambia, and had been new to the squad, but he was fielded in 2 of their 3 warm-up games, or 2 of their 3 friendlies before the tournament, which we're going to see here when we look at the lineup. So David Simukonda joining the squad there. And we will look at the recent games to see which of these players kind of were fielded. So as we said, they used a 3-man central midfield in 86% of their games over the period. And then in 2 of the 3 friendlies, so 67% there, a 3-man central defence. And by the way, just if you're interested, that's a 4-5-1 formation in the first game, a 4-3-3 in the second, and a 4-4-2 in the third. In short, 8 different players started in those 8 spots. So in terms of predictions, we are none the wiser. However, I didn't say what we thought at the end of part 1. I'll do that and then continue the discussion here. We had 3 possible starters, so no definite, no likely, just possible: Kelvin Kapumbu, Miguel Cheiwa, and Benson Sakala. Of course, Kelvin Kapumbu no longer an option there, so we'll remove him from our thinking. Benson Sakala, we think he will likely start, not necessarily in the central midfield. Cheiwa did start the middle game in game 2. Benson Sakala, by the way, started game 2. So actually, Sakala was game 2 and Cheiwa was game 1. I mixed them up there. Anyway, we do think those have a decent chance of starting because we think they'll go with experience in this defensive midfielder position. It's right in the middle of the park. So we're going to do something odd here and say we predict that a likely starter will be an experienced player, but in terms of who that player is, we just put Miguel Cheiwa and Benson Sakala as both as possible candidates there. Probably leaning a bit towards Benson Sakala, I gotta say. He's the more experienced player. Okay, let's go to central midfielders. And in part 1, we divided these into left and right because it was pretty consistent which players were playing on the left and which were on the right. So that's why we have left midfielders here. A definite candidate in Obino Chisala, and he was selected for the squad. And here we have another likely candidate not making the final cut here, Emmanuel Banda. And he was just selected for the preliminary squad. And at the seemingly off the squad level, we had Golden Mashata, and indeed is off the squad, it seems, because not selected even for the preliminary squad here. In terms of starters, again, we couldn't really determine a starter, so we had all 3 of them. We had Obina Chisala, Emmanuel Banda, and we thought Miguel, defensive midfielder Miguel Cheiwa, might start on the left of this 3-man midfield here. We'll have to remove Emmanuel Banda from that list then. And but we'll stick with what we got: Obina Chinsala and Miguel Cheiwa. And it strikes me that I forgot to put the stars on the players here. So that was 1 for Benson Makala, 1 for Miguel Cheiwa. We might put another one for Miguel Cheiwa. We're going to move him down here and put him as a possible starter on the left here. So we'll repeat his name there. And let's go to the right side. Here we have a definite candidate in Kings Kangwa in terms of making the squad, and Kings Kangwa did make the squad. The likely candidate, though, another surprise here, Edward Chilufya, someone that the manager mentioned by name, actually, as one of his difficult decisions, not selected for the final squad, just on the preliminary squad there. And also Klautus Chama. Well, he was just at the portable level, but also a mild surprise that he didn't make the final squad. And then possible but unlikely, Larry Balwa. Larry Bwalya, sometimes called Rally Bwalya, just making the preliminary squad. He had been a possible but unlikely candidate. And we have three new names to put up here, all of them making the squad. Holy smokes. It is Owen Tembo and Joseph Liteta and Wilson Chisala, not to be confused with our defensive midfielder Obina Chisala there. Let's meet these new candidates here. Owen Tembo, been with Zambia since 2024 with 6 caps and no goals, and is 30 years old. He got those caps in the African National Championship. That's why we hadn't put him on our list. He plays for Power Dynamos in Zambia since 2022 and had never appeared for the senior national team until he started. I don't know if he started them all until he appeared in all of the last 3 friendlies there. I don't think it was, because we had 8 different players across the 8 positions. So he just started the one. He started game 3, it was. Okay, that is Owen Zembo. The other one, Joseph Liteta, no caps for the national team. He's much younger, at 19 years old, and he does play outside of Zambia. He's with Cagliari in Italy. That's a good club for such a young player. He moved there recently, having played for Atletico Lusaka in Zambia for 3 years before that, and never appeared for the national team before being named to the preliminary squad, so didn't even appear in any of those friendlies, even on the bench. So Joseph Liteta, nevertheless, making the final squad. Finally, Wilson Chisala, with Zambia since 2025, with 4 caps and no goals. He's 23 years old and plays for Zanaco in Zambia since 2022. He got his first appearance on the bench in March of 2025. And started one of their remaining 4 games to November here. That was in one of those friendlies. Otherwise, he was on the bench for 2 and not selected for 1. And most of his caps have been earned in the African National Championship. So again, we had seen that he was on the bench back in March, but we just didn't think he was worth putting on the list. So once again, we're embarrassed. But there's many candidates with just a single appearance on the bench. So we want to have a bit more significant involvement before putting them on our list. So I defend myself in that decision. In this case, though, he was selected for the final squad. So there we go. Let's look in terms of predictions for what is basically left and right midfielders. And on the right here, we had Kings Kamwa as a definite starter. As we saw, though, 8 different players used over the 8 games, so none of them used twice. And one of the reasons we made this left-right separation was because Kings Kamwa almost always started on the right of a 3-man midfield. However, he was nowhere to be seen in the friendly, so he wasn't even one of the 8 players there. And the massive overhaul we've seen here in the central midfield could mean that anyone could start. But as we said earlier, we think they are more likely to have some experience on the field, although that's more likely among defensive midfielders. Here we could use some speed in the midfield. Anyway, we still think it could be Kangwa, but we feel that a newcomer will come in for at least one of the positions in the midfield here. So we're putting as Likely starter, we'll move Kings Kamwa down from a definite starter to a likely starter. And we're also going to predict a new player appearing in the midfield. Here, at least one. Okay, upfield we go to left attacking midfield, and here we begin with definite candidate Joseph Banda or Joseph Sabobo Banda. And he was selected for the final squad. We have as a likely candidate Fashion Sakala. You may be surprised that we just had him at the likely level, but if you want to review why, we talked about those things in part one. And then we have another surprise here, a likely candidate, and this time not even making the preliminary squad, Kelvin Kampamba. But not even selected for the preliminary squad there. Our possible but unlikely candidate, Albert Kangwanda, was selected for the preliminary squad, but not the final cut. And then two players seemingly off the squad proved to be because Evans Kangwa and Charles Zulu, neither of them selected even for the preliminary squad. We do have a new candidate, and lo and behold, it is yet another one who made the final squad. So it is Given Kalusu. We will introduce, so we actually think he might be a starter, and I'll tell you why. He actually is coded as an attacking midfielder, but we're putting him here really for ease of our discussions. He didn't start on the left here. Actually, he started once as a central midfielder and once as a left forward there. I think he was on the left as well in central midfield. Just making sure. Yes, he was kind of on the left side in that 4-5-1 formation. So he does favour the left a bit, it seems. Given Kalusu has been with Zambia then since 2025 with 3 caps and no goals, and he plays for Maestro in Zambia, that club sometimes known as Musa. And given Kalusa had been new to the squad, he did get his first cap in November of 2025, but he appeared in all 3 pre-tournament friendlies, started 2 of them and was subbed in for another. So we're only going to see one other player who was involved in all 3 there. And I think we met him because it was Fashion Sakala there. Let's look at what our predictions were there. We had as a likely starter, despite just being a likely candidate and not a definite one, Fashion Sakala. And then we had 2 possible starters in mind, Kelvin Kapamba and Joseph Sabobo Banda. Kelvin Kapamba then won't be on the list in the revised list because he wasn't selected. Let's look at the recent games though. Fashion Sakala did start twice over here, both as a left attacking winger. In the 3rd game, he started as a centre forward. So he was the only one to start all 3 games there. In game 2, newcomer Given Kalusa started as a left central midfielder, and in game 2 started as a left forward, so kind of in the left upper quadrant here. That's it. So Kelvin Kapamba not selected. All right, so Fashion Sakala, we are going to keep him as a likely candidate here, but we are going to consider him a definite candidate for starting somewhere on the field. As we saw, he started as a forward in one. I'm just going to put 3 stars beside him here. No, I'll put 2 stars beside him here and then move his name to the forward line here. And we're going to give 1 star to Given Kalusu because we think he's one of the most likely newcomers to get a start here. But we're not bold enough to think that he's a likely candidate. All right, let's move over to right attackers. And we have we have no definite or likely candidates. We have at the possible level, Lamek Banda. He was selected for the final squad, and then possible but unlikely candidate Jackson Kampamba, not selected even for the preliminary squad. Nor was the first of our seemingly off the squad players, Gamfani Lungu, but our second one, Frederick Mulambia, was selected for the preliminary squad. The third one, Joshua Mutale, not selected either, even for the preliminary squad. Here too, we have a new candidate to add to our list, and one who made the final squad. So it's Pascal Fury. Pascal Fury. We'll introduce him quickly. No goals or appearances for the well, we have to put him as one. We have to put him as one cap now because he did start a game there in the warm-ups. Pascal Fury is 20 years old and plays for Zesco United in Zambia and was new to the squad. He started one of the three warm-up games there, and that's our new candidate. So we have. Let's go to the predictions then. At the end of part one, we thought the likely starter was Lamek Banda, and we had three candidates as possible starters: Kings Kanwa, Calvin Kapamba, who's off the squad, so he won't count in the revised version, and Joseph Bamba, all as possible starters over here. Let's look at the recent games. We see three different players started, and the first one is a bit odd. Right back, Lubambo Musonda starting over here, and then we have Joseph Banda, and in the third game, it's newcomer Pascal Fury. In those games, though, Banda also started as a right forward, and so did Kings Kanwa as a co-forward. And then, as we said, Kelvin Kapamba is gone. So basically, we'll replace Kapamba on our list with the newcomer Pascal Fury. That leaves us, yes, and we're gonna put Lamek Banda down from likely to just possible here. So we have four possible starters here: Kings Kanwa, Joseph Bonda, Lamek Banda, and Pascal Fury. We really can't be sure beyond that. So I'll put a couple of stars beside our players here. Pascal Fury, Lamek Banda. I'm going to put Fashion Sakala with 1 star over here. He's a likely candidate. And I'm going to put Joseph Banda with 1 star over here. Okay, let's move to central attack here. And we don't use this position that much. It was just used once over the period, and it was the forward Kennedy Musonda who filled the role the only time it was used. However, we do have some candidates over here. We did move a couple of them actually, but the one that remains is Chipyoka Songa, and he is at the portable level. He was not selected even for the preliminary squad. We do have new candidates over here. Actually, one of them is Given Kalusa, who we met on the left over there. We moved him, so he is coded as an attacking midfield. And then we have Kapabwe Musonda just making the preliminary squad over here, so we won't go into detail on him. Our prediction at the end of part one was that they won't use a lineup with this prediction, and as far as the friendlies went, that proved true. None of the formations that they used here used a central attacking midfield position, and so our prediction remains the same, that we don't think they're going to use a lineup that involves a central attacking midfield position. If they do, of course, it'll be someone out of position playing in it. Okay, on we go to the forwards. We have no secondary strikers to consider, so our last category will be forwards. Here we had a definite or two definite candidates. Um, the first one, Patson Daka. I just got to do a little fiddling to create that graphic there. There's Patson Daka, who was selected for the final squad, and then Kennedy Musonda, also a definite candidate and also selected. We should remind you that Fashion Sakala is actually coded as a forward, but we moved him to the left and talked about him on the left here, but we will talk about him in terms of his likelihood of starting as a forward here. We had three candidates at the possible but unlikely level: Ricky Banda, Francisco Mwepu, and Andrew Feary. The only one of those to make it to the final squad was, to the preliminary squad was Andrew Feary. So Ricky Banda and Francisco Mwepu not even making the preliminary squad there. However, both of our seemingly off the squad candidates did make the preliminary squad. That was Kingstone Mutandwa and Abraham Siakombo. And we do have new candidates here. In fact, four of them. One of them, you've heard their name because he popped up as a central defender, for heaven's sake. So the first one is Jack Lan. And the second one is Elia Mandanji. We'll take a closer look at those two players because they made the final squad. We'll just give the names of the two who made the preliminary squad here. The first one, Chanka Zimba, and the second one, Abel Nairongo. Again, all of these players young enough that they might come back into the picture. They may be names in the future. Let's take a look at the ones who made it, though. Jack Lan, with Zambia since 2024, with 2 caps and no goals, and he is 24 years old. And he plays out of Zambia. He plays for Austria Lustenau in Austria. They played in Norway and France and Sweden as well. But he was born in Zambia, Jack Lan, and he had been new to the squad. I have him appearing in all 3 games there. We do know he started as a central defender in the second game there. He came in as a sub in the other 2 games. Although the number of caps he has says 2, so it may mean he was on the bench for one of those games. Anyway, making good inroads there, Jack Lan. And the second one is Elia Mandanji. He's just 18 years old, no caps for the national team. Well, he has 2, I guess, as we'll see shortly. Plays for Kafu Celtic in Zambia, but on loan to a bigger club, Zanaco. And he subbed into 2 of the 3 warm-up games in the month before the tournament, the 2 of our 3 friendlies there, just as a sub-man Danji. So it'll be interesting to see if any of these players get on the field for the period. That brings us nicely to talk about starters. At the end of part 1, we figured Patson Daka was a likely starter and Kennedy Musonda a possible starter. Patson Daka started games 1 and 3 here. In the first game, he was as a sole forward, but in game 3, he was a co-forward alongside Kings Kangwa. And in game 2, it was Fashion Sakala starting as the centre forward in a 4-3-3 formation here. So where does that leave us? Well, we're still going to consider Patson Daka a likely starter, and we'll still consider Kennedy Musonda as a possible starter. But we're going to move Fashion Sakala and Kings Kangwa up here because they are possible starters at this level too. So there's Fashion Sakala at the likely level, and then Kings Kangwa. Where is he? Oh, he's a central midfielder. Good heavens. So he can start anywhere, Kings Kangwa. and he was at the definite level. So there we go. All right, that is it. That's the end of section 2 here, and we're going to move into section 3, and we want to welcome listeners to the short version of the mediacast here. And we are racing through a review, basically, of what we covered in sections 1 and 2. It kind of encompasses actually the entire mediacast here. I'm just doing something on the computer here, so please forgive my preoccupation. Okay. We're ready to move on to our list, so let's go back to the top of the list and see what we got. The big news is manager Avram Grant was fired after World Cup qualification, so we have Moses Shichone, an ex-player, stepping in to manage the team. He had been assistant manager and a caretaker manager, actually, before Avram Grant came in, but now he'll be leading them through the team. But he was manager over 3 friendlies. Was manager over 3 friendlies in November and December. So he made quite a few changes and then brought some of those changes into the final selection. So we're going to get a couple of surprises here. Anyway, goalkeepers, we have Lawrence Mulenga as a definite candidate. He was selected, but our likely candidate, Toaster Sabata, was not selected for the final squad, just the preliminary squad there. The first of our possible candidates, Charles Kalumba, just the preliminary squad for him, and Patrick Chuma not even making the preliminary squad there. And we're not going to deal with candidates below that level unless they've made it, and we do have candidates below that level who made it. So Francis Mwanza was at the possible but unlikely level, and he was selected. And then Willard Mwanza, a new candidate, the first of many we're going to meet, also selected for the final squad. In terms of predicting starters, we put our full weight behind Lawrence Mulenga. We think they'll go with experience in goal, and we think he's a definite starter. Moving on to defenders. For central defence, we have 2 definite candidates, Kabaso Chongo and Gift Mfande. A likely candidate in Dominic Chanda. All of these making the squad. Sorry, I should be clear on that. And then our 2 possible candidates also making the squad, Frankie Musonda and Stapila Sunzu. So all of our definite, likely, and candidates definite, likely, and possible candidates making the squad there, and no new candidates making the final squad. In terms of starters, we think Kabaso Chongo will be a definite starter at centre back, and we think Gift Mfande and Stapila Sunzu are possible starters back here. To the left back position, we had a definite candidate in Lubambo Musonda, actually coded as a right back, but he played over here during the period. And at the likely level, no candidates. Possible candidate Kepson Kamanga, not even making the 55-man preliminary squad there. However, we do have a new candidate. We should have had him on our list in part 1, truth be told, but it is David Hamasenya, and he was selected for the final squad. In terms of starters, we give possible level to both of those candidates, Lubambo Musonda and David Hamasenya. We're not sure who's going to start over here. Going to right backs, we had we had no definite candidates. We have 2 on our list here. I'll tell you why right away. So actually no definite, no likely candidates here, just 2 possible ones. Benedict Chapeshi, who just made the preliminary squad, and Matthews Banda, who was selected for the final squad. In terms of starters, we think Matthew Banda Matthews Banda is likely, so we give him 2 stars. And the reason we've moved Lubambo Musonda over here is because we think he might start here now that they do have a left back in David Hamasenya. We also think the guy who's been starting here quite a bit, Gift Mfande, is still a possible candidate over here. Both of those were definite candidates to make the squad. We've just moved them here because we think they have a possibility of starting as right backs. Over to defensive midfield, a definite candidate in Benson Sakala, and he was selected. Likely candidate Miguel Chewa also selected, but a bit of a surprise with our other likely candidate, Calvin Kapumbu. We're going to meet someone with a similar name in the attacking end, so I got to be careful how I say it. Calvin Kapumbu, just making the preliminary squad. We have a new candidate here, David Mukonda, and selected for the final squad there. Okay, in terms of starters, we think Benson Sakala is a possible starter, and Miguel Chewa also a possible starter in the midfield. We have more midfielders, though, to look at, though. We divided central midfielders into left and right because that roughly fit. And so on the left, we had definite candidate Obino Chisala. He was selected for the final squad. And then we had Miguel Chewa. We put him over here because we think he's a possible starter. He wasn't initially on the list. But he is a selection. We had Emmanuel Banda, a likely candidate, but another of several likely candidates not selected for the final squad. We'll cover the right side and then talk about our predictions. Right midfielders, we had a definite candidate in King Skangwa. He was selected for the final squad, but our likely candidate, Edward Chilufya, only making the preliminary squad, and same with possible candidate Klautus Chama. We had 3 new central midfielders named to the squad. So newcomers Owen Tembo, Joseph Liteta, and Wilson Chisala among the changes that the new manager made here. Now we'll talk about starters. We brought Miguel Chewa in and put him as a possible starter here. So he could either be a more defensive midfielder or a left-sided midfielder in a 4-3-3 formation. Kings Hamwa, we think, is a likely candidate to start here, but we also think he's a possible candidate to start further upfield. So we go further upfield here, and we looked at the left attacking end of the field, and here we have a definite candidate, Joseph Banda or Joseph Sabobo Banda. He was selected for the final squad. We had 2 likely candidates, Fashion Sakala and Kelvin Kampamba. Fashion Sakala was selected for the squad. Kelvin Kampamba not selected even for the preliminary squad there. And a new candidate here, Given Kalusa. We think Given Kalusa is perhaps one of the more likely candidates who are new that might get onto the field in the competition. Anyway, in terms of predictions, we give Fashion Sakala 2 stars as a likely starter, and then newcomer Given Kalusa, we give him 1 star as a possible starter. Okay, right attackers. We've moved a couple of players over here, but the players on the list, initially there were no definite unlikely candidates. Just the possible candidate Lamek Banda, who was selected for the final squad. And that's it at the possible level or above. But we do have a new candidate coming in, Pascal Fury. In terms of starters over here, that's why we brought Joseph Banda and Fashion Sakala onto the list here, because we think there is a possibility that they could be starters on the right here. And we think Lamek Banda and Pascal Ferry are equally likely. So four are equally possible, I should say. So four candidates at the possible level pretty much indicates this position has been fairly unsettled. For central attackers, we just had the possible candidate Chipyoka Songa, and he was not selected even for the preliminary squad. In terms of predictions here, we basically predict that they're not going to use this position over here. And finally, we look at forward. So we had two definite candidates, Patson Daka and Kennedy Musonda, both of those selected for the final squad. And then we had that was it for candidates at the possible level or above. We have two new candidates coming in, though. Jack Lan, Lahne, so it could be Lane there, and Elia Mandanji. Jack Lan oddly started as a central defender in one of our friendlies, but we don't give him any likelihood of starting here. What we do have for predictions is Patson Daka as a likely starter, and then three candidates as possible starters. Kennedy Musonda, yes, and then we brought in Kings Kanwa from other positions. Kings Kanwa and Fashion Sakala, we think they are possible starters as forwards as well. Ooh, that brings us to the end of our spotlight review, and we're going to move on to our next order of closing business. We're going to review surprises here. So we have quite a few of them. Notable non-selections. Well, I guess the first one would be Avram Grant, the manager who lost his job at the end of October there. Following World Cup qualifiers. So because he was out and a new manager came in, we have a lot of changes in the lineup. That begins with goalkeeper Toaster and Sabata. We consider him a likely candidate, but he only made the preliminary squad. And in fact, that's the same for all of these. All of them were at the likely level in part one, and all of them made the preliminary squad, but not the final cut. So the next one is defensive midfielder Kelvin Kapumbu, and then central midfielder Emmanuel Banda, right attacking midfielder Edward Chilufya, and then in this case it was a likely candidate who didn't even make the preliminary squad, attacking midfielder Kelvin Kampamba. Right, so surprise inclusions. The only surprise we would say is goalkeeper Francis Mwansa, who was a possible but unlikely candidate for us, but who was selected for the final squad. So that was a bit of a surprise. The new candidates may be surprises, but we just have them in the new category, and we have a lot of them. So goalkeeper Willard Mwanza, left back David Hamasenya, three central midfielders. Hang on, I'll do a defensive midfielder first. David Simukonda, and then our three central midfielders are Owen Tembo, Joseph Liteta, and Wilson Chisala. Sorry, my graphics are running a little bit behind here. So Owen Tembo, Joseph Litela, and Wilson Chisala. Then we have right attacking midfielder Pascal Ferry, and forward Jack Lane, who played as a central defender in one of the friendlies, and finally Elia Mandanji. Great, and we're not going to get into the new players or players making the preliminary squad there. We did talk about them in part two, and in terms of injuries, we had no injury concerns at the end of part one. We do have one though between when we did part one and part two, and it is Edward Chilufya, And I got to confess to a misunderstanding here. I had read an article that led me to believe that he was actually over this injury, because the article was talking about the manager's difficult decisions to basically cut some of our likely candidates here and replace them with newcomers, and specifically mentioned that Edward Chalufa was a difficult decision for him. But I see now that his knee injury sustained from October 25th has kept him out over the whole period. I thought he had come back from that injury, but no, he is expected to return on December 31st. So that basically gave the manager no choice as far as he was concerned. Edward Chalufa, we'll call him, dropped due to injury there. Okay, that is the only injury news that we have, though, and it does bring us to the end of our media cast on Zambia's part 2 of Zambia's players. A pretty long one there, because the new manager coming in had some different philosophies, and so got rid of some of the candidates we expected and replaced them with young newcomers. Anyway, that was pretty interesting, and I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. We will see you for our next team. We would like to thank Pixabay and Cold Fingers for the wonderful music used in this media cast. The title of the piece is Eid Mubarak.